Have you named each one of your cells? Why not? They're alive. Once we see life as it is, not holy but still beautiful, we have to ask ourselves, what gives any of this any value? What makes it ethically not okay to take away life? Well, all morals are subjective, but a good rule for morals is that they should be consistent. Otherwise, it becomes war, the alternative social system of comparing who has the bigger stick, winner takes all. But while that option isn't objectively wrong, in fact it's how evolution works, it still sits opposite to maximum fairness. Now, fairness isn't objectively right either, but we have to make a choice between the moral system of war or consistency. Essentially, it's between the ideology of if I can, I should, and the ideology of do unto others as you would do unto yourself. What it really comes down to, from a logical perspective, is the recognition that you could always lose the upper hand. Power can always be lost. A war can always be lost. And the moral system of consistency protects you should that ever happen. So, okay, in regards to the value of life, if we use the moral system of consistency, we need a rule that results in consistent value being given based on this rule. So, for example, if the rule is the more chromosomes you have, the more value, well, then a human would have more value than a fruit fly, but less value than a dog. My personal moral rule places the value of life on past or current cognitive complexity and the capacity to feel pain. Specifically, the average of the current cognitive complexity and the highest cognitive complexity of the past. So if someone is asleep just because their momentary cognitive complexity is low, that doesn't make their value low. And the specific line I draw for killing to be wrong is enough cognitive complexity for an organism to comprehend its own death and fear it. Where I got this perspective was thinking about the scenario: if someone is in a coma and you need to decide whether to pull the plug, what is the right thing to do? Well, in my personal opinion, I'd say the right answer would be to do whatever that individual in the coma would have told you to do when they were in their prime cognitive complexity. This rule isn't inherently right. It was created out of self-centeredness. I personally hate pain and love complex thought. But a giraffe might place value on how tall your neck is. There's no objective rule for what gives life value. At best, all we can do is agree on what gives life value to us. But again, we need consistency, and I feel like a lot of people nowadays do not hold the consistency because they don't really know what gives life value to them. Abortion is a prime example. When people oppose abortion as ending life, well, half of those people eat chicken. So it's not really about ending a life, it's about ending a human life. But what makes a human life special? For me, human life can become special due to its cognitive complexity and capacity to suffer. But the cows I eat also have a high cognitive complexity, so what's my answer to that? Well, while I value human life somewhat higher than a cow's because of the higher cognitive complexity, since a cow can comprehend and fear its own death, I'd actually say it is unethical based on my own morals to eat a cow. So why do I still do it? Well, this goes back to a video I made titled Common Sense, where I talked about the conflict between ideal and practicality. It's not practical for me to stop eating meat due to my personal emotional stability's dependence on meat. But in an ideal world, no suffering would have to occur for my meal. And when we can practically create meat in a lab with no suffering required, I hope to see that meat become available everywhere. But for now, we still have to live in the practical world. So going back to the abortion example, a fetus has less cognitive complexity and capacity to suffer than a chicken. So if you're vegan, I would consider it consistent for you to be pro-life. But otherwise, I see it as an inconsistency. The typical argument I hear for pro-life is that it's about potential. So let me answer why I value current cognitive complexity and not future potential cognitive complexity. Well, future value is an economics principle because it is very practical. It leads to overall growth and investment. From a financial standpoint, it is reality. And we need to live in a practical world. So if you're a community with a small population, well, we can understand why many religions evolved a moral code that prohibited abortion. In the early stages of humanity, we needed to grow. But practical for money and biology are very different. Although evolution might indeed be nature's capitalism, burning a cell is merely burning a cell, while burning a dollar is burning as much money as that dollar would have become if invested. The key differentiator here is loss versus pain. A dollar can't feel pain. Money works on the rules of practical loss, while life works on scientific theory or neurological pain. In this case, the theoretical scientific perspective is more tied to what actually exists than practical economics. The economics perspective is tied to the future, but the scientific perspective is tied to the now. Damage a cell and, well, until that cell undergoes mitosis or meiosis, only one cell is there to suffer. Again, from a forward-thinking practical economics perspective, yes, killing a cell is killing all of its descendants, but pain is more important than loss. Starving people still need to eat, despite the fact that the money you give them would have tripled if invested. When you question the argument of value being given by potential, it really falls apart. If someone is about to die, they have less value than an unborn fetus because they have less potential. But I would say if they're a cognitively alert individual, they have more value than a fetus, and dare I say even a baby. At the end of the day, if you value life based on its potential, then consistently you have to say that the closer to death an individual is, the lower their value, since they have less potential. This means 5 minutes before someone dies, no matter how alert they are, from the perspective of potential, they are worthless, because they only have 5 minutes of potential left. And personally, I reject this. I judge value based on what is, not what could be or would be, because I am a determinist. And speaking of determinism, another point is that the actual present holds priority over a theoretical future. From a deterministic perspective, a theoretical future that doesn't happen was never going to happen. It doesn't actually exist. But future potential does come into play with another factor, which is tragedy. If an aborted baby was gonna become the next Einstein, then yeah, that is tragic. But it was not unethical. Tragedy is often a necessary part of life. It involves choosing one bad option over another bad option. We punish financial tragedy because it's practical, otherwise people would steal. But ethical tragedy is very different. Tell me, what's the difference between someone driving 10 miles an hour over the speed limit and someone driving 10 miles an hour over the speed limit and suddenly a kid jumps in front of their car and gets killed? From the perspective of tragedy, one is much worse, but ethically speaking, both drivers did the same thing in both situations. Currently, the law punishes drivers for being unlucky, such as if someone jumps in front of their car. But this is necessary, because otherwise, people would run people over all the time, which would be horrible. Even running a dog over causes pain to a cognitively complex organism. But even if everyone was aborting their fetuses, there would still be no cognitively complex organism experiencing pain. That being said, though, the current methods of abortion do risk causing pain to a somewhat complex organism, especially at the later stages of pregnancy, where it could be argued that the organism has begun to develop cognitive complexity. And okay, even if the fetus only has the same capacity as, let's say, a chicken, just as it should be in the food industry, it should be required that every abortion procedure ensures that the fetus does not experience pain. Okay, but that's all for today. Leave your perspective in the comments. My opinion on this is constantly shifting. I haven't considered all the perspectives yet, so I'd love to hear you challenge me and force me to better solidify and adjust my stance. P.S. Ben Shapiro, please debate me on abortion.
Lay it down, let me see your hand. Show me what you got. You're always talking, but you're not playing. It doesn't match your face. Gotta find my way away from this place. Can you take me now? I want it real. Are you afraid of me now? Are you afraid of me now? Do you feel it? Do you feel it? Do you feel that I can see your soul? Do you feel it? Do you feel it? Do you feel the beat in your heart? I want it real. Run away with